but I'm just going to get started since we are already running a little bit late
I will.
today, 5 late. Um, um, I would like to, it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Professor Makoto Kitada from Osaka University, who will be speaking to us on translating Dakani poetry, Nusrati's Gulshan-i Ishq. That is a project that he started with Professor Richard David Williams, or is working on with Richard Williams at SOAS. And so we heard from Richard a few years ago in this webinar. So we thought it would be appropriate to also invite Professor Kitada to speak. Professor Kitada is professor of Urdu literature at Osaka University, Japan. He holds degrees in Indo-European linguistics and Prakrit text from Tokyo University and a PhD at Martin Luther University, Halle, Germany, in Indology on the Sangita Ratnakara. So that's also a very important topic of interest to all of us. But today we'll be hearing him talk about one of our favorite texts, the Gulshan-i Ishq, and his work translating it. So please join me in welcoming Professor Kitada.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see you all, and it's a great honor for me to be with you. So I'm starting now. So let me share my PowerPoint. So I'm starting. On the first slide of this PowerPoint, you see the ruin of Barakaman in Bijapur. Barakaman literally means 12 arches. It's a huge construction consisting of many arches made for Sultan Ali Adil Shah II. Nusrati, the author of the Masnavi Gulshan-i Ishq, The Garden of Love, was a court poet of this King Ali Adil Shah II, who reigned from 1656 to 1672 AD. After the death of Ali II, he served Ali's successor, Sikandar Adil Shah. Nusrati died in 1674. One of Nusrati's representative works is the war epic in praise of Ali II, titled Ali Nama. This epic deals with the first 9 years of his reign, in which he fought with the Maratha Confederacy led by Shivaji and defeated the Mughal army. In contrast, the Gulshan-i Ishq, or Garden of Love, is a love romance consisting of 4,406 verses in mutaqarib meter, which was completed in 1658. That is, in the second or third year of King Ali's reign. King Ali was himself a good poet. The king and poet Nusrati were very close friends. Ali ascended the throne as a young man of 18 years. Nusrati dedicated this romance to the young king. This explains the freshness of feeling which this romance is filled with. Nusrati's Gulshan-i Ishq seems to be an adaptation of the romance titled Madhumalati, composed by the Awadhi poet Manchan, composed in 1545. However, there are also two Persian adaptations of this story. Probably Nusrati's direct source of adaptation is one of the Persian versions. According to Aditya Bale and Simon Waitman, who translated Manchan's Awadhi version, this story is an allegory of the theological system of the Sufi order of Shattaris. However, although Nusrati also frequently refers to Sufism, he does not seem to go much into philosophical depth. The story is a kind of Bildungsroman. A young prince Manhar, who is confined in a white palace remote from cares of the world, sees a beautiful lady Madmalati in his dream. The young man goes on a journey in quest of the lady, which symbolizes his soul or anima. On his solitary journey, he encounters a demon and fights and defeats him. The demon symbolizes the shadow and fear of adolescence. The lady of dream is transformed into a bird and flies away. The young man loses his soul and wanders insane, but in the end he is united with the lady, who has returned into her human form, which symbolizes that he has attained maturity and grasped the real world. Dr. Richard Williams, a senior lecturer at SOAS, and I are translating this text in English. I have made a preliminary translation of the entire text of 4,405 verses. On the basis of this, we meet every week online and going through the text again. We discuss many details and so many grammatical details and subtle nuances, and Richard is making a beautiful translation which ought to fulfill the demand of connoisseurs of literature. So I learned many things from Richard, and I'm very happy and grateful to Richard. In my talk today, I don't go deeply into historical facts. As to the historical background of this work, Richard has already dealt with it in one of the previous sessions of this seminar. Besides, this work is a fictional account. It's hard to extract historical data from its imaginary descriptions. For my talk today, I originally planned to make an analysis of Nusrati's aesthetics, but very soon this also turned out to be a troublesome task, because Nusrati is not a man of theory. Instead, he is very fond of materials. He is very happy to describe things in detail using rhetoric to the full. Nusrati is an encyclopedic poet, but he does not theorize. So what I could do at the utmost is to pick out single statements from which his thought and attitude can be surmised. Nusrati's encyclopedic and picturesque description stimulated painters to make beautiful illustrations of the text. Illuminated manuscripts of this work are found in archives over the world. I used two of them. Actually, Richard searched and found these two. So I used two of them, and I show pictures explaining the story today. Both manuscripts are in Philadelphia. One is in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. The other is in the Free Library of the Philadelphia. For convenience, I call the former manuscript 1 and the latter manuscript 2. Manuscript 1 is a sumptuous, extravagant volume illustrated elaborately. In contrast, manuscript 2 is of a more modest quality. The letters are in rough handwriting. The pictures are made with rough touches, but this roughness has a certain kind of charm which might remind us of the style of Wiener Secession and Expressionism. I hope my comparison is not much beside the point. Sometimes it succeeds in better expressing the intensity of emotion, as we'll see. On the contrary, manuscript 1 is certainly a masterpiece, great masterpiece, but the figures can give somehow a slightly stiff impression. Now I give an outline of this story in miniatures of the two manuscripts. The hero of this story, Prince Manhar, sees in his dream a beautiful princess Madmalati who lives in a distant land. He immediately falls in love with her, and he goes on a journey to find her. So in the picture, Prince Manhar is painted white which symbolizes his innocence and purity. Princess Madmalati is red, which symbolizes the passion of love and also worldly desire and pleasure. This contrast of white and red is an advance notice that this story narrates the process in which the white canvas of Prince Manhar is colored by his love to Princess Madmalati. On his journey to attain his beloved, he is tinged with various colors of worldly experiences. Red also symbolizes the blood of the enemy he defeats, and also uragarang, or worldly pleasures. The culmination will be the marriage of the two, which is a festivity of colors. Manhar loses consciousness in love sickness. Messengers are dispatched in quest of the dreamed lady, but in vain. The same scene from the manuscript 2. Manhar bids farewell to his parents, harbor and sailing vessels. While crossing the ocean in ships with his retinue, a serpent attacks them and he drifts ashore onto an unknown land. It's remarkable that Nusrati spends a lot of verses to describe peculiar shapes of living creatures in the sea. This does not occur in Manchan's original in Awadhi. Nusrati's detailed description of the ocean perhaps reflects his contemporaries' interest in ocean trade. Manuscript 1 contains a realistic picture of sailing vessels, while Manuscript 2 contains a fantastic scene with shoals of fish. Do you see the picture? A sea serpent assaults the ships. In Manuscript 2, the unknown land in which Manhar suffers a harsh journey is depicted almost in boldly minimalist touches, which symbolizes the wanderer's solitude in a vast and barren country. Wilderness under a scorching sun. He walks ahead in a dark forest and encounters a hermit who shows him the path. This character corresponds very well to the wise old man in the mythologist Joseph Campbell's theory. Such kind of figure appears on the journey of a young hero in various myths or in the dream of an adolescent. After a long and tough journey, Manhar reaches a hidden garden, in which he finds a princess sleeping alone in an empty house. Her name is Champavati. This picture represents a mysterious garden, calm and refreshing, which he arrives at after a long journey in the wilderness. In the total silence of the garden, Manhar finds Princess Champavati sleeping. At the moment he wakes her up, the stagnated story itself starts again to move ahead. So I shift to the second part of my PowerPoint, which I share in the moment. So. Once she has woken up, she tells him that she is held captive by a demon. Manhar fights with the demon, kills him and rescues Champavati. The two leave the garden. Manhar brings Champavati back to her parents, King Surbal and Queen. It turns out that they are by chance close friends of Madmalati, the lady of the dream. Receiving the news, the missing Champavati has returned home. Madmalati and her mother Sarika come to Champavati's city to visit her. As a result, Prince Manhar is finally able to meet Madmalati, the lady of his dream. However, Madmalati's mother Sarika detects their rendezvous. She gets so furious that she casts a curse on Madmalati, who is transformed into a bird, parrot, and flies away. The picture of manuscript 2 depicts the Madmalati in the shape of a bird shedding drops of tears on a tree. The bird is caught by a prince whose name is Chandar Sen during hunting. This bird speaks the human language to him and tells a tragedy. A female gardener tells Chandar Sen who the bird in truth is, and the gardener advises him to take the bird to its homeland. So Chandar Sen, taking pity on her, goes on a journey with her and finally finds Madmalati's homeland and gives her back to her parents, King Dharamraj and Queen Sarika. Queen Sarika, repentant for her thoughtless act of crossing her daughter, changes the bird Madmalati back into her human shape. Meanwhile, Manhar, who has gone insane with despair, after roaming from town to town, by chance appears in this land. He is brought to the palace. So in this picture, we see Dharamraj, the father of Madmalati, and then Chandar Sen, Prince Chandar Sen, and Manhar. Manhar has changed into clean clothes. Manhar and Madmalati's father, Dharmaraj, take seats side by side. At last Manhar and Madmalati are reunited, and their marriage is celebrated with great splendor. The highlight of this work is the description of the marriage ceremony. The sumptuous banquet with Epicurean food items is described in detail. Various attractions such as musicians, singers, and dancers, jugglers, fireworks, and so on are described. This illustration shows biryani and gravy served in the banquet. Quote, Biraniyan ve yakhniyan ke dungar talar, lahwe hor durajan ke mozun pukar. So I read my own translation, so it's not Richard's beautiful translation, but my literal translation. So I'm not sure if you like my translation. Under the hills of biryanis and gravies, the harmonious calls of birds, kites and partridges are heard, unquote. So it's the same as biryani and gravies. The illustration shows a cook, vegetables, and a pair of cauldrons. Laddu and lozenges, barfi. Nusrati writes, lozenges, barfis are accumulated to construct miniature castles. There are many funny descriptions like, Jukoija ju pashmak ke bhande pade, lage mir chanyan ke tiskore. Cannonballs of cotton candies hit some guests, while whips or maybe bullets of peppers knock out other guests, unquote. Then after the dinner, the guests are offered pan or betel leaves. Quote, अजब के उड़े किया जफंकरियां है सच जो होवे गुलाला जिसकी उपज दिसे पान खाते दसन रंग धर किया पाचल मास को लाल तर. Translation. What wonder! Thin petals of Keora flowers, which are scattered over betel leaves, turn into red tulips by juice of betel leaves. When people ate the betel leaves, their teeth got red and looked like diamonds changed into rubies. Unquote. While the guests are chewing pans, the attraction of music and dance starts. You see fireworks. Then King Dharamraj, who is Madmalati's father, receives bridegroom Manhar and his retinue. Nuptial night. Kisses and embraces. After the marriage ceremony, Manhar and Madmalati bid farewell to all the people. Then the couple sail in the ocean. Manhar, accompanied by Madmalati, comes back to his homeland. Manhar and Madmalati salute to Manhar's parents King Bikram and Queen. Prince Manhar and Father King Bikram on the thrones. Manhar is crowned and Bikram decides to renounce the kingdom. Happy end. So is the story. In the Garden of Love, we have two heroes and two heroines, Prince Manhar and Prince Chandar Sen, then two heroines, Princess Madmalati and Princess Champawati. They become two pairs of bosom friends, respectively. On the other hand, we have two couples of lovers, the couple of Manhar and Madmalati, and the couple of Chandar Sen and Champawati. So the friends Manhar and Chandar Sen, two princes, then Madmalati and Champawati playing on swings in the garden. In the intermediate stage of the story, however, their relationships are intersecting. Manhar finds Champawati in a hidden garden, which symbolizes the innermost heart of Manhar. On the other hand, Chandar Sen considers the bird Madmalati as an equivalent to his own soul. Chandar Sen says, quote, I want to get that bird as a partner of my bird of soul. Then the cage, which is my body, will be comfortable. Unquote. So, the bird Madmalati symbolizes Chandar Sen's anima or soul, while Champavati, Manhar's anima. However, in the end of the story, Madmalati is united to Manhar, while Champavati to Chandar Sen. Manhar and Madmalati have their names beginning with the letter Ma, while Chandar Sen and Champavati with the letter Cha. In Manchan's original, however, the characters corresponding Champavati and Chandar Sen have different names, Pema and Tarachand. So in Nusrati's Garden of Love, the symmetrical positioning of characters is made more explicit by renaming them with the letter Cha. Another highlight of the Garden of Love is the long, detailed description of the nuptial night, that is, coitus. Since I have already translated in an article the scene of banquet with Epicurean foods and the scene of the nuptial night, I don't go into these details today. What is intriguing in his description is that the sexual intercourse is compared to astrology. This implies that the couple's union is a hierogamy of celestial bodies. The sport of love is also compared to the war. It's called the war in the bed, Sage Sangram, which is an expression also found in the Kama Sutra. In the war of love, blood is shed by nails, which refers to the techniques of the nail scratches or nakakshata of Kama Sutra. The climax is described by the terminology of military affairs, for example. Quote, the army hastened to occupy the town and conquered it immediately. The hero opened the closed door of a secret treasury through inserting a key of boon and acquired gems. Showing his dexterity in the art of spear, he won the ring brilliantly. Through the technique of the supple hand, he drilled the burning charcoal. The god of love, Madan, without delay, drew his bow powerfully, shot the cowrie brilliantly with his hard arrow of white poplar. He is a magician in the paradise of pleasure that is a woman. Alas, he successfully let the camel pass through the hole of a needle. He, without delay, inserted his stick of diamond into the shaft of the mine and produced a fountain of ruby color. Through his alchemical touchstone, Paras, the white flower of Siras changed into a red flower of Madan. Pure silver became pure gold. The man, applying quicksilver simab, produced surbal from the seal of beautiful red color. So here I don't know what this term surbal actually means. I continue. Through practicing the immortal esoteric Amar Bhed of the esoteric of archery, Dhanur Bhed, a full moon arose from the sun. The redness of the evening appeared onto the moon. The hero, becoming the winner of the battlefield, enjoyed the excitement of intense pleasure. Unquote. Here, Nusrati refers to alchemy. Then he refers to the art of archery, Dhanurveda, which is associated with the esoteric of immortality, Amara Veda. In this case, the term Veda, sacred text, is contaminated with another term, Veda, secret or actually revelation of a secret. Diamond is obviously a symbolical term of Tantra. The full moon arises from the sun. The moon and the sun probably refer to the chakra of the head and the chakra of the navel, respectively. In the sexual yoga, Kundalini, the sexual energy, rises from the navel up to the head. The yogin is often called hero. I wonder if these esoteric notions mentioned in Nusrati's text are brought from the esoteric science practiced in Bijapur at that time. The Nujumul Ulum, which means stars of sciences, might be a such work. This is an encyclopedic survey of astrology and astral magic composed in Bijapur, apparently by Sultan Ali Adil Shah I, who reigned from 1557 to 1579 himself, if Emma Flatt's conjecture is right. Ali Adil Shah was the great-grandfather of Ali Adil Shah II, Nusrati's patron. That means this text was composed about 100 years before the Garden of Love. The text interweaves many different cosmological accounts of the heavens and the earth, including Islamic and Hindu traditions. In addition, it deals with various topics of court life, such as gardening, perfumery, hunting, music, fireworks, alchemy, which is called rasayana and kimia, jewels, cooking, viands, sherbets, halwas, confectionery, and so on. Love, ishq, is also one of its topics. As we've just seen, Nusrati deals with the same topics in his Garden of Love. Nusrati must have known this encyclopedia composed by the great-grandfather of his patron, and he probably makes allusions to this work in his Garden of Love. However, my theory is difficult to prove because the manuscripts of the Stars of Sciences available to us are broken off in the middle, and these topics are only mentioned in the table of contents and lack texts. So there is no means to trace the descriptions contained in the Garden of Love back to the Stars of Sciences. Recently, Richard Williams suggested that the Garden of Love has some affinity with the genre of what is called ajaib literature or wonder literature, which deals with prodigies of the universe and curious experiences of travelers and seamen in the Indian Ocean. In fact, the Garden of Love enumerates strange figures of marine organisms, describes 7 climates, eclime, caused by the proportion of the 4 elements, and curious atmospheric phenomena such as falling snow. The Garden of Love embraces in itself the entire world together with its miracles. In the Garden of Love, female characters play important roles. As we've seen, Madmalati's scene in Manhar's dream stimulates him to go on a travel. Women are flying fairies or Apsara, a sleeping beauty, a mother sorceress, a flying bird, a flower woman who functions as a go-between, and so on. In this manner, females are motifs taking males out of a small world of boyhood for a journey over the sea and for the broad outside world. Femininity lures and seduces men, tosses about men. As a result, femininity brings men's idea to realization. The Garden of Love contains many dialogues by female characters, which are valuable records of female speech, even if these are imaginative. This is in stark contrast to Nusrati's other work, Alinama, which is a war chronicle. The Alinama is a story of fighting men. Nusrati, the encyclopedic poet, loves very much to make several Nusrati loves very much to make several levels of meaning overlap. In next instance, the miserable bird Madmalati desperately pleads with Chandar Sen not to get involved with her adversity and waste his happiness. Her sensitive laments of love are interspersed with the terminology of chess, shatranj, which is at the same time the terminology of military science. Quote, I have a losing game with an overwhelming opponent. I am marching against the whole world. The world craftily advanced pawns of loneliness and crushed the defense of the queen of my heart, so checkmated the queen. They, by means of ruses, dispatched many elephants of pangs and blocked off the way of the king of my intellect, so checkmated the king. They broke the fair play, hustling horses of brutality into the battlefield, and looted everything, setting elephants of anxiety in rut. In Indic classical literature, the elephant is a symbol for the mind and mental activities. I continue. They completely trampled the chessboard of joy and arrested the king through an intrigue. The wise minister of my heart is stupefied. The face of hesitation cannot be turned to the right direction. I cannot hold the elephants of thought at my side. I have no idea how to drive the horses of sight. I cannot gather foot soldiers or pawns into a troop. Counterattacked by fate and evil, I fell into a difficult situation. The piece of horse of endurance is good for nothing. My enemies turned this piece down by doubled power. Now they are just about to checkmate Shahmata. They deprive me of victory and I lose my life. Even if Lilaj, who is the legendary inventor of chess, comes to help me today, he will not be able to offer any remedy to this game." Unquote. Sorry. Thus, the most emotional and sensitive expression of a female soul overlaps with what seems to be situated at its opposite extreme, that is, the cool-headed maneuvering of the military men of Bijapur. As mentioned earlier, Nusrati rarely makes theoretical statements. In his narrative passages, his attitude is reflected in his sporadic statements on the art of writing. In his beautiful description of a white palace whose polished surfaces of walls reflected the image of the moonlit sky, Nusrati says as follows, quote, "At the first glance, the white mansion was like a mirror, because all its surfaces reflected the sky. Compared to it, the moon with moonlight was wanting beauty. That very reflection of the moon was captivating. Speech looked firmly established in the intellect of readers. Indeed, a reflection looked better than its original. Bachan akl par yo mukarrar dise, yakin asrti aks behtar dise." The fairies saw it and got stupefied and said, "Until now we have never seen the sky turned upside down in such a grandiose manner." Unquote. Nusrati's point seems to be that the figure of speech can make unreal things appear real, even realer than reality, in the intellect of the readers. In the art of speech, imitation can be more beautiful than its original. The inverted sky symbolically implies that in rhetoric, the things are often converse of reality. So I'm coming to end. So please have patience, a little more patience. So in this connection, his concluding word to the scene of Epicurean food is of great interest. Following his description of confectionaries, Nusrati says as follows, "Confectionaries, like elixir, cool down the bodies of the guests of the banquet, heated by abundance of fancy dishes. Alexander lost his life in darkness due to his anxiety for acquiring the elixir. This refers to the legend of Alexander the Great, who went on journey in quest of the water of immortality. Alexander and his retainer Khizr finally reached the underground world. Khizr could find the spring of immortality, while Alexander, who chose another path, died in despair." I continue. "In contrast, in this banquet, servants courtly entreat the guests to drink this water of life. When I, Nusrati, describe the relish of these sweets, my pen of reed turns into a sugar cane. When I describe the salty snacks, the salt cellar turns into a lustrous inkpot. If you, my readers, want to actually enjoy such relish, swad, please think of a woman's lips and mouth. May connoisseurs keep this delight, which is divine favor, in remembrance, dhyan, forever." Please note that salt is used as an aesthetical term for beauty, or an essential or decisive factor of beauty in art objects or poetry. Luster, chab, is a technical term in poetics or alankar shastra. So these passages describing the tastes of foods implicitly talk about rhetoric. Also the term swad or Sanskrit swadu means relish, while sawad in Arabic language means black ink. It's a pun that the relishes of fancy meals are written with black ink, which is ambrosia dripping from the poet's pen. All these relishes are compared to the sensuous pleasure of a woman, which is the connoisseur's object of contemplation, dhyana. Here, the intensity of worldly pleasure comes very close to mystic rapture. In this rapture, the ephemeral pleasure of the world is made immortal in the hearts of those who read or are reading or will read Nusrati's writing. In 1686 AD, which is 28 years after Nusrati wrote The Garden of Love in 1658, and just 12 years after his death in 1674, Bijapur was annexed by the Mughal Empire. However, the Garden of Love continued to be read, and many beautifully illuminated manuscripts were created. In the 18th century, the love poems were ghazals written in Dakani Urdu by Wali, a poet from the Deccan, became popular in the Mughal imperial capital of Delhi, which led to the introduction of the spoken language into classical poetry in northern India. This is considered the beginning of what is called the classical period in the history of Urdu literature. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mikata. Now, Annapurna ji will unmute herself and start to field questions from the audience.
Wow, what an amazing and beautiful talk. Thank you, Makoto and Vivek for inviting him to join our seminar. I have several questions while we wait for other people to put in theirs in the chat box. Please do that. Let me kick it off by asking a very simple question.
Yes.
Visually, you talked about symmetry between men and
Yes.
men, women, and couples,
Yes.
and also between humans and animals. It's there, the bird and the
Yes.
right? Yeah. I was very interested in that image of the patchwork dress that the two figures wore in the painting you showed us. The patchwork that dress, like the muraka, pieces of cloth joined together in their dress.
Yes.
Yes, it's such a kind of break in the narrative, visual break in the narrative, just like his white dress or that red room. So visually, if you could a little bit about that, I would appreciate it. And then I'll ask you a few more questions, which are more conceptual questions.
Yeah. Why they? So your question is why they wear the patchwork clothes?
No, I guess let me rephrase it in another way, please. What my question is how does the visual structure of these paintings and the way that the elements are shown there mirror the desires of Nusrati to show symmetry, to show other kinds of qualities? How do the painters relate to Nusrati's? How do you see the painters relating to Nusrati's text?
Yes. Oh, it's a difficult. So it's a difficult question. So we haven't, or I haven't analyzed that relationship between his narration and so this illustration, so structurally. So we've just seen in the beginning scene, so the white palace in which the manhar is confined is written white, and in the original text it's not called safed, but it's always described as sav. So at first, so we thought that it means just pure, so immaculated. But then in the picture, in the illustration, we've seen that it's white. So it's white.
So it's beautiful because it extends it into the interpretation of the painter.
Yes.
So I have a question, because we don't seem to have any. There is a question, but let me ask this one more question, and then we'll move to the chat. There's a lot of care and protectiveness of people and relationships in the symmetry. And what is the value that you see placed on friendship in this text? Friendship between various characters, even between lovers. There's a lot of care and protectiveness. If you could just talk about that way that Nusrati communicates that to us.
Oh, the value of friendship.
Yes, and the incredible protectiveness, like she says to him, "Don't get involved in this chess game that I'm in." It's such a caring thing to say, in spite of the fact that she's trapped in a cage and in this bird body.
It's a very intriguing question. Thank you for your suggestion. But I've been until now a bit like Nusrati, the author. So I'm not a person of theory, and I lack the depth of thought. So I will see that point then in the future.
Okay. Let me go to another question. I'll save them. Okay, so here, oh, I see somebody else has written something in. Thank you so much for your talk, Dr. Kitada. And this is from Amber Elizabeth. I'm wondering if you can speak more to your note in the beginning of the talk that you felt though that Nusrati was not a fan of theory, though he was like an encyclopedic poet, nonetheless.
Yeah.
That's her question. Could you talk a little more about Nusrati's encyclopedic quality? His poetry has the quality of having this encyclopedic attentiveness to the world, even though he's not really a big fan of literary theory or those kinds of things. I think that's what.
Yes, he is that good in presenting the things in systematic way, but so he likes to enumerate things so in concrete way. And so recently, so as I told in my talk, so recently I came to this text, the Stars of Sciences, and also Richard had the idea that so the Garden of Love is some resemblance to this Ajaib literature, wonder literature. So I am beginning to think that this the Garden of Love is a kind of how shall I formulate that? So it's a kind of it's a work resembling, it's an equivalent to the Stars of Sciences, but written in the form of a romance. So it's an encyclopedia, but not so theoretical treatise, but it's a story, so that the readers can also enjoy, so at the same time can enjoy and also have acquire education from the work.
Can I expand on this question and take it in a slightly
Yes.
different direction?
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about whatever you presented us today and my knowledge of some of this kind of love literature is that love literature has a didactic component, but it isn't overtly didactic, right? And the lack of the de-emphasis of didacticism, what it seems to be doing in this text is presenting. I wrote this down when I was listening to your translations and looking at the paintings, that love seems like an infinitely curiosity-provoking experience.
Yes.
And thus it expands the whole world's wonders. So that everything has this wondrous quality in this manuscript because it's a love story, and it infused with this quality of the kind of sparkling quality that happens in the context of erotic encounter and fulfillment and consummation. And actually it has a relatively peaceful ending, so it has a peaceful ending, so that's also, so you can actually get to savor the joy and the curiosity. There's no tragedy, there's no Ranja and here being separated and or any of those kinds of things, right? So you could just comment on that. I would maybe that would be my question, and maybe Vivek and Richard also have questions coming forward. Yeah. Would you have anything to say to what I said? Or is it just something that we can agree on, or just enjoy the joy of and leave it and ask Vivek to ask his question?
So love changes so the whole world according to you. I agree to you.
Yes. Okay. Vivek, Richard, would you like to ask?
Yeah, I'll jump in now because this is stuff that I'm working on and thinking about as well. I think Annapurnaji, you put it really nicely that well, the theorists of wonder and wonder literature also write this. They say that wonder is the pleasure of knowledge, the love of knowledge, of learning, of discovering new things, of contemplating new things. And that is certainly how the narrative of things like the Gulshan-i Ishq or the Madhumalati, how the narrative unfolds through discovery, through learning new things, through seeing new things. And yeah, I think that's very much a nice idea, and I think it's an important one. One question that I would have is whether or not Nusrati is drawing upon wonder literature or drawing upon tropes, and the footprint of the wonders of creation and Najum al-Ulum in the Deccan at this period is just massive. There's not a single library without a copy of the wonders of creation, at least one or two. So you would imagine that they have access to this knowledge. But my question is, does Nusrati, by drawing upon and citing or giving us all of these fish in the ocean when they're in the sea, is he innovating or is he citing, right? So is he actually through the citation process, is he coming up with new things? So that's a question that I would have. The other question that I have, I don't know how related it is to that question, but do want to just pose it while I'm speaking, is you said that Nusrati is likely drawing upon a Persian translation of the Madhumalati, right? And that seems correct, given the fact that the Gulshan-i Ishq is there's so much Persian vocabulary all over it. He uses the word ajab like every 5 stanzas. So that seems, I understand where that is coming from, but what do you think that says about circulation, right? What do you think that says about the availability of texts like the Madhumalati? Does the Madhumalati as a Avadi text die? Does it just vanish from the availability of somebody like Nusrati writing in the Deccan? Or does he turn to the Persian version because it's more systematic for some reason? It's less oral. It's something that's codified, written,
Mm,
uh,
mm,
and can be
mm.
adapted or readapted into vernacular. So those are my questions. Thank you so much, Professor Kitada.
Thank you.
I completely understand why all my brilliant friends and colleagues go to you for to work with on their Dakani. So
Uh, so this so the theory of adaptation from Persian version so has uh, actually as a little problem. So because the who was the uh, mm, so the one the scholar who wrote Dakani the history of Dakani literature in English. So do you remember his name
David
written?
Matthews,
Yeah?
Matthews,
Matthews, yes,
Matthews.
yes. Matthew writes that there are two Persian so translations or adaptations from Madmalati, but there are some discrepancies between between the versions and in Persian versions the so the name of Manhar's parents are different, and as far as I remember, so there are not so not there. They are not completely so they are not completely parallel to uh, Nusrati's version. So I I should actually check that Persian versions, but I haven't done yet because I will get the manuscript the manuscript
Life
from
is long, Professor
that
Kitada.
soon. Yeah.
You'll have the chance to do that. Life is long.
Yeah, yeah, and about the circulation. So so in in that point also I have not much to say, but Nusrati himself says that so he was recommended by his friends to make a Dakani version of Madmala. So this story. So this story is. So they say this story is very. So is a very old story and very famous. But so Nusrati should make a nice text for us based on this old story. So it must have been pretty so circulated, so widely circulated. But in Fitch language, so as I said, um, I can say nothing concrete. So likely in Persian language. So because like as you said, Nusrati's text contains very many Persian vocabulary, and although his text so he mentions so technical terms, so theoretical terms from in Sanskrit, like Chavi, the last of Alankara Shastra, Or in one place he uses the term artha bhava, so also the meaning, and bhava the emotion, but in connection to dance. So expression of dance. So he called the expression of dance as artha and bhava. But I think it. So he adapt. So he took these technical. So Indic. So Sanskrit technical terms. I think he learned these so orally. I don't think he could read Sanskrit or so these Devanagari things.
Richard, do you have a question?
Not specifically. I mean, it's been wonderful to hear this, and I think it's very useful for us to hear these questions as well. I was thinking a little, Makoto, about the question from Amber Elizabeth about the encyclopedic poet and how he's not a fan of theory. And one thing, just this is a comment, really, it's not a question, but one thing that we keep finding is Nusrati's funny and he has a sense of humor.
Yes.
And it's really, really interesting because it's so erudite and technical. And he does have this encyclopedic quality and he lists all of these things and it can be heavy. But he also has a sense of humor running all the way through. And we often struggle to understand a line. And then once we've made sense of it, we laugh because actually he has made a joke. And it's interesting, you know, we use the paintings a lot to help us interpret the text, but sometimes the paintings don't necessarily convey the humor, particularly in your manuscript one. And I liked your comment, Makoto, about the difference between this incredibly magnificent, beautiful text and then the slightly more rough and ready one, but actually conveys a lot of emotion. So, for example, we often are drawn to the folios of the fairies descending, tumbling down through the sky to find the sleeping prince. And it's beautiful. It's really stunning. In the text, it's it's almost slapstick. I mean, they're all so excited to get down and find out what's going on that they all kind of crash into each other. And so they all are actually kind of tumbling down, rolling down, hitting into each other. So it's not an elegant flapping of beautiful silks, etc., and wings. It's actually, you know, these confused fairies crashing into each other. And so there's this level of humor and storytelling running through. And I think I agree with you, Makoto, about this sort of encyclopedic erudition plus humor plus talking about love, but he's not really heavy-handed with theory and so on. He's more drawn to showing how clever he is, but with humor. It's interesting.
Well, the one thing to add to that, though, is that the encyclopedias are not very serious either. So these wonder manuscripts are really, really fun. I mean, they're popular knowledge. They're full of stories that are just sort of improbable. And it might be that he's riffing on those kinds of things, but that would take a lot more work to do. But both of you are working very hard on this.
And it's tricky. I mean, Vivek, since you're here, it's interesting with the wonder dimension because on the one hand, some of it definitely seems to be in keeping with that and the enumeration of all of these wonders of creation, etc. But then he also does the enumeration about, you know, rice dishes, for example. And so some of it is, and so there is a spectacular quality to the enumeration of the banquet, of course, but it's not always the the wonders of fish, the wonders of the ocean, the wonders of trees, mysterious creatures. It's also, look at these chicken dishes. let me tell you all about them in the same style. And I mean, is that something? I mean, we do know, of course, about huge gastronomical collections. Of course, we've got Neha Vermani's work and so on and so on. So that's all very extensive as well. And so, yeah,
That to me seems straight out of Chandayan type things. Like
mm,
they enumerate the kinds of dishes that are at this banquet at the beginning of the text. There's also like the tendency to describe every single bit of a thing. Like you think of the shiknak for instance, and so that was sort of the question that I was asking, is he innovating while doing this, while citing this popular type of, well, there's this fish, there's this boat, there's this whatever. Is there innovation in that? Something that I've been finding a lot especially towards the end of the 17th century, early 18th century, is that these wonders become so much more dramatic. Like it just becomes so much more in your face, which lines up nicely with where Nusrati is in time and place, sort of on the edge of the 18th century, and starting to really sort of be more direct about the power of wonder. So, anyways, are there any other questions on the floor?
Not that I see.
Well, so please join me in thanking Professor Kitada from Osaka University.
Thank you so
For
much.
Thank you very
For
much.
those of you who are joining us right now, for whom our timing was a little bit misaligned, this lecture will be online, it has been recorded, and we will upload it, and we will drop a link to that in our next, in the announcement for our next lecture, which is by Ursula Sims Williams at the British Library. Ursula will be talking to us about exploring the library of Tipu Sultan on May 17th at 2 p.m. British time. I can't say enough about Ursula's gunas, her good qualities. She's really a star of the Persian manuscript world, and I hope that you all show up. Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
to our audience and to our speaker and to Vivek and to Neil.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.